Good evening and welcome back to the Heal Security Dispatch Deep Dive with Mark and Diana, your trusted source for the latest in cybersecurity trends and expert insights. Proudly presented by Heal Security. Today is Friday, November 20th, 2025. Our mission today is to give you a real shortcut to being truly well-informed. We've gone through this week's comprehensive source material, everything from global threat activity in October to news that's, well, breaking right now.
And we're really talking about the full spectrum here.
Absolutely. Nation-state supply chain compromises,
Right.
urgent 0 days, and even a fundamental shift in how attackers are thinking about their business model. It's been a week defined by, I'd say, high stakes and just incredible speed.
It has. You know, when you just look at the raw data, the sheer velocity and the diversity of the threats is just, it's overwhelming.
Right.
Before we even dive into the big targeted compromises, we have to kind of establish the baseline level of noise.
What does that baseline even look like?
Well, we saw data from the Acronis Cyber Threats update. In October alone, they blocked approximately 13.8 million dangerous URLs.
13.8 million.
At endpoints. And that's just dangerous web links. That figure alone just underscores the relentless, persistent threat volume coming from the web.
So the old idea of a single perimeter defense is completely out the window.
Yeah. Long gone. We're past that point. You
Yeah.
need multi-layered protection, advanced behavior-based detection just to manage the daily deluge.
That context is so important because while 13 million clicks are blocked, the threats we're about to discuss, they bypass some really sophisticated defenses entirely.
Exactly.
So let's unpack this, starting with what might be the most challenging area for any organization, vendor security, the supply chain. We are seeing major compromises in firms that, we expect to be bulletproof. It just proves the supply chain is often the path of least resistance.
It forces you to ask some really tough questions about vendor governance. I mean, take the F5 Networks breach.
Okay, let's start there.
The sources confirm this was a major incident and it involved a Chinese state-sponsored actor, but what really stands out here is the dwell time.
How long they were inside the network.
Right. They maintained unauthorized access for at least 12 months.
A full year in a company like F5.
The full year. F5 is a major cybersecurity and networking firm. A year of persistence inside a security company's own environment is, frankly, a massive failure in internal detection.
Regardless of how they got in initially.
Exactly. This incident should be setting a new industry standard for how companies review their internal security posture.
And the F5 incident deals with infrastructure, but we also saw a huge risk coming from application trust. I'm thinking of the Salesforce incident involving Gainsight.
Ah, yes. That one was fascinating in how it worked. The attackers, who might be linked to the Shiny Hunters group,
A pretty notorious group.
a very notorious group, they compromised Gainsight systems, or more likely got their hands on some very powerful authentication tokens.
Which let them do what, exactly?
It gave them unauthorized access to customer data across a whole range of Salesforce environments, all through these OAuth connections.
So the attack leveraged trust, not a traditional vulnerability.
That's the key. OAuth is the protocol that lets third-party apps access your data without your password. So when you grant an app like Gainsight a powerful scope,
You're giving it deep programmatic access.
you're handing over the keys. If Gainsight gets breached, those access tokens are pure gold for an attacker. Salesforce had to pull an emergency brake,
What did they do?
a massive maneuver. They revoked every single active and refresh token for all Gainsight apps and just pulled them right off the app exchange.
So the key takeaway for anyone listening is you have to audit those powerful OAuth scopes.
Constantly. And rotate those keys like they're radioactive. You just can't assume your vendor security is as good as yours.
And when you take that kind of access failure and you project it onto critical national infrastructure, the implications are chilling.
Absolutely. We saw exactly that with the Almaviva and Ferrovie dello Stato, or FS breach in Italy.
And FS manages the national rail system, correct? Critical transport and logistics.
That's right. And the sheer volume of data the hacker claims to have stolen is just staggering.
What are we talking about here?
The claim is somewhere between 2.3 terabytes and 23 terabytes.
23 terabytes. Of what kind of data?
Highly sensitive material. Contracts, design documents, HR files, you name it. Operational materials.
You have to wonder, how does a single operation exfiltrate up to 23 terabytes of data without setting off every alarm in the building?
It suggests a fundamental failure of network segmentation and monitoring, and at a critical scale. This isn't just a data leak that ends with a fine.
No, this is strategic.
It's a severe strategic vulnerability, Hostile actors could use those engineering documents to cause massive physical or logistical disruption across the entire country.
It's a perfect transition to the immediate threats, the zero-day fire drills. These are the flaws where security teams have to drop everything and patch now.
Right, because the exploitation is already happening. And we can start with something that's on almost every computer. The 7-zip utility.
7-zip, what's the vulnerability there?
It's under active exploitation via a symbolic link-based RCE vulnerability. That's CVE 2025-11101.
Okay, let's pause on that. Why is the symbolic link or symlink component so nasty here?
So a symlink is basically a shortcut that points the operating system to another file. In this attack, the hacker tricks 7-zip during extraction.
How so?
They can fool the application into dropping a malicious file, not into a temp folder, but into a privileged system directory.
Bypassing normal security checks.
Exactly. And that allows arbitrary code execution on Windows systems. And since almost every enterprise employee uses 7-zip, the attack surface is just immense.
And it's not just desktop utilities. For anyone managing web infrastructure, especially WordPress, there was the W3 Total Cache plugin flaw.
Oh, that was a big one. CVE 2025-9501, that plugin is on over 1 million WordPress sites.
And it was a PHP command injection flaw.
Correct. Which means an attacker can force the server to run their code just by submitting some specially crafted input. It's a huge, immediate attack vector for web defacement, credential theft, anything really.
We also saw the heavy hitters this week. Google Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine had a 0-day.
CVE 2025-5419, and it was confirmed to be actively exploited in the wild. When a flaw hits the V8 engine, the risk is immediate and global. Millions of users just browsing the web are suddenly at risk.
And for the enterprise side of things, the Oracle Identity Manager, or OIM, bug must be causing some massive headaches.
A huge headache. OIM is often the absolute centerpiece of enterprise identity governance.
Managing access to everything.
Everything. A potential 0-day there that lets an attacker bypass authentication. I mean, that means the core control plane for access in a large organization is compromised. The urgency to patch and investigate for anyone using OIM, it just can't be overstated.
So we've covered software flaws. Let's shift to the element that's often the hardest to control. People. The insider threat is still incredibly effective.
It really is, because it starts with legitimate access. And we had two really striking examples this week that show how trust gets monetized.
Let's start with the CrowdStrike Insider situation.
Right. So you have an individual, current, or former employee, and they weren't just leaking internal screenshots. They were actively selling authentication cookies.
And that's the critical detail, the cookie sale.
It's a massive shortcut for an attacker. If you have a valid session cookie, you don't need to brute force a password. You don't need to bypass MFA.
You just hijack a legitimate authenticated session.
Exactly. And that can grant you expensive access until it expires. It's the perfect example of legitimate access being misused for profit.
And then in healthcare, we saw the Geisinger Health and Nuance settlement.
$5 million. And this all came from a Nuance employee misusing their authorized access to sensitive patient records.
So even with IPA and all the compliance rules?
If a vendor's employee decides to misuse their legitimate credentials, they can compromise protected health information. The lesson here is your third-party access monitoring needs to be just as rigorous as your internal monitoring.
So moving from internal misuse to external manipulation.
Yeah.
We're seeing social engineering get a lot more refined.
Oh, absolutely. The days of mass, poorly written phishing emails are, well, they're fading. We're now seeing incredibly tailored precision attacks.
And Operation DreamJob is a prime example of that.
It's the perfect example. It's a sophisticated cyber espionage campaign aimed specifically at people in manufacturing companies.
So they're not just blasting out emails.
No, they're doing deep reconnaissance. They impersonate legitimate recruiters, send personalized messages, create job postings that are tailored to the victim's exact role in company.
And they get the victim to download malware, disguised as, what, interview materials.
Interview materials, job documents, exactly. It's social engineering customized for industrial espionage. The goal is to steal intellectual property. And it bypasses basic awareness training because the lure feels so authentic.
Speaking of exploiting trends, the sheer volume of malicious mobile apps pretending to be ChatGPT or other AI assistants is really something.
It's a classic malware vector with a shiny new coat of AI paint. People download these apps thinking they're getting a cool new tool.
And instead they're installing spyware.
Spyware that harvests credentials, spies on their activity. The key insight here is the lack of scrutiny on the app stores. You have to check the developer, read real reviews, and look at the permissions before you download.
Right. If an AI chatbot wants access to your camera roll and all your contacts,
Something is fundamentally wrong.
we've hit the tech flaws and the human element. Now, let's look at how the business of cybercrime itself is shifting.
This is a really important strategic change. The most pronounced shift is in ransomware tactics.
They're moving away from just encrypting endpoints.
Yes,
Okay.
they're moving away from mass encryption and toward the strategic targeting of cloud storage, specifically misconfigured AWS S3 buckets.
Why S3 buckets? What makes that shift so important?
It maximizes their efficiency. Instead of spending hours encrypting hundreds of individual machines, which you can often restore from backup,
They just steal the data.
they focus on data extortion. They download terabytes of centrally stored sensitive data from misconfigured cloud storage and then demand a ransom for non-publication. It bypasses endpoint security entirely.
And the root cause is usually just overly permissive IAM policies.
That's it. Identity and access management policies that grant far too much access. Attackers are finding it's more reliable to exploit these misconfigurations than to find a network vulnerability.
So the advice is strict access controls, least privilege.
And continuous monitoring of your object storage. It's absolutely critical.
We also saw the raw scale of network warfare this week. Microsoft mitigated a record DDoS attack.
A record 15.72 terabits per second attack. I mean, that's just an astronomical figure. Launched by the AI Sure You botnet, it's pushing the limits of current infrastructure defense,
And then we saw the ripple effect when Cloudflare had that outage that hit ChatGPT and X.
which was caused by unusual traffic spikes. It shows that even if an attack isn't successful against the primary target, the sheer volume can still compromise the global infrastructure that supports everything.
If we connect all this to the bigger picture, it feels like the U.S. is reacting to these aggressive operations by announcing a pretty significant shift in national cyber strategy.
A very significant shift.
The new posture is described as explicitly more proactive and offensive. What does that actually mean in practice?
It's a doctrinal change. Instead of just focusing on defense and resilience after an attack, the emphasis is now on imposing greater costs on adversaries.
So, going after their infrastructure.
Exactly. Actively disrupting their command and control centers, their finances, their staging grounds, often before they launch a major campaign. It's an admission that defense alone is not enough anymore.
But the sources also pointed out the warnings from critics about this shift. What are the dangers they foresee?
The primary concern is escalation. When you adopt an offensive posture, you risk escalating the conflict in cyberspace, drawing in more actors or, increasing the severity of retaliation.
And it blurs some lines, too.
It blurs the lines between intelligence, military, and civilian agencies. Who gets to decide which piece of infrastructure gets disrupted? And what happens when that disruption affects civilian internet users in another country? It raises the stakes for everyone.
That is a massive strategic issue to watch. Before we wrap, we found one fascinating nugget that shows how a seemingly small design choice can create a massive privacy risk for billions of users.
This was the WhatsApp contact discovery flaw. So, WhatsApp uses phone numbers as unique identifiers, right?
For account verification and finding your contacts.
The flaw was that researchers could automate queries at scale, basically trying a huge range of phone numbers to see which ones were linked to active WhatsApp accounts.
And the scale of this was, 3.5 billion active accounts they could enumerate?
Something like that, yes, 3.5 billion. And they could harvest publicly visible details too, like profile photos and bios.
And the root cause is just the architectural decision to use phone numbers as the main identifier.
That's the core of it. Meta's response was to implement stricter rate limits.
Which is a patch, not a cure.
Right. It slows the scraper down, but it doesn't fix the systemic privacy weakness of linking active accounts to easily guessable public phone numbers.
Okay, so if we're summarizing the major themes this week, it's clearly the complexity of the supply chain. You have the 12-month dwell time at F5, the OAuth risk with Gainsight, and that 23 terabyte potential exfil from Almaviva.
And the second theme has to be the relentless, immediate exploitation of known flaws. The 7-zip RCE, the WordPress command injection, and that Chrome V8 zero-day.
It's a lot to track.
It is. So my final provocative thought for you to consider revolves around that U.S. strategic shift.
Okay.
Given this move toward a more proactive, offensive cyber strategy, how might nation-state actors change their targets and methods in the near future? Knowing the response is now intended to be more punitive, How will they shield themselves?
And what does that look like for civilian firms?
Exactly. What does it look like for civilian firms that could become unintended collateral or maybe even new staging grounds for proxy attacks designed to draw a response? It's a question of where this newly defined conflict lands next.
A compelling and definitely unsettling thought to leave us with. We're grateful for your time and hope you found today's insights valuable. Join us again on Monday for more expert updates and critical cybersecurity news. Remember to like, subscribe for ongoing coverage and analysis, and sign up for a free trial of Heal Security Desktop at healsecurity.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and keep your digital world secure.